Welcome to the microscopic world of organisms. Vishweshwaraya Industrial and Technological Museum is opening up a new exhibition, Superbugs, the End of Antibiotics. To understand this concept and see how these microorganisms have developed into superbugs. This installation in the exhibition welcomes all the visitors. One can see capsules, tablets, vaccines all around. At the same time, we have a huge demon arising out of all these capsules, tablets and vaccine. What is this? This is the depiction by an artist as to how a simple microorganism has grown into a huge superbugs. Let's try to explore these microorganisms. Well, this exhibition has been classified into three categories. A brief introduction to the microorganisms. How do they look like? What is their size? Where are they found? All this one can visualize in this exhibition on Introduction to Microorganisms. The second section talks about humans and its interaction with the microorganisms. And the third section is about the global scenario. Here we have the first exhibit wherein one can zoom into the world of microbes to see how big they are. These bacteria about which we are all talking about is about 1 micrometer of size. Compared to that, our skin cell is about 30 microns. So you can just visualize how small they are. So naturally, one cannot see these microbes with the naked eye. Let's take a closer look at some of the well-known bacteria which are all around us. The first one is the one which causes typhoid. This bacteria is known as Salmonella enterica serovara typhi. We have 10 such bacteria which have been cultured in the petri dishes, and these actual bacteria are available for viewing in the exhibition. Where are they found? Here in this digital interaction exhibit, one can just put his finger on the digital exhibit, and when he puts his finger on the digital exhibit, you can see that the bacteria which is on his finger is simulated on the digital screen, and the way they multiply can be seen on this exhibit. In order to get rid of the infections caused by these microbes, we need to have antibiotics. The first antibiotic known to the human civilization is the one which was isolated from the penicillium mold by Alexander Fleming, which is nothing but a fungus that grows on bread and fruit. Though Alexander Fleming could understand how it works on the bacteria, it took almost 10 years for Oxford biologists Howard Florey and Ernst Chain to make the first antibiotic, penicillium, which was used on humans to fight the infections caused by the bacteria. This entire exhibit is covered through a mobile application. One can download the free mobile application after coming to the museum, and we have a free wireless network inside the exhibition, and you can listen to the voices of these famous scientists and listen to the audios of all the exhibits on your own mobile. This also meets the COVID-19 requirements for one to visit the exhibition. In the next exhibit, we have an example of the bacteria Staphylococcus aureus, We have two petri dishes placed in the exhibition, and these Staphylococcus aureus have been killed, and we have two circular plates which are nothing but antibiotic discs. After killing these Staphylococcus aureus, this has been inserted into this disc which has an antibiotic component. In spite of the antibiotic being present inside the dish, the Staphylococcus aureus has multiplied and grown. You can see multiple molds of these Staphylococcus aureus in these two examples. That means these microbes are able to beat the antibiotic and still survive. The next section in this exhibit on microscopic world, we have the history of antibiotics development starting from the first penicillium which began in 1928 to the present day. One can scan through the digital flip book. So you can just flip your hand and look into the history of the different types of antibiotics which have been developed. Now, after introduction to the history of antibiotics, and we now have reached a stage where most of these microbes have become resistant to the known antibiotics. But then new antibiotics are not coming into the market. So biologists are looking for alternatives. Now we move on to the next section, that is the human section, where the impact of microbes on humans are experienced by different types of people. We have examples of patient, doctor, nurse, pharmacist, environmentalist, designer, etc. Here we have Dr. Devi Shetty, one of the famous cardiologists from the Narayana Hospitals group, trying to tell and explain the importance of antibiotics and how these microbes have developed resistance to the antibiotics and how a doctor and the patient should behave towards the use of antibiotics. This exhibition also brings in some of the most effective media of popularizing the concept of antibiotics through a puppet show where Tina explains how the infections caused to simpler microorganisms could not be cured due to the antibiotic resistance developed, trying to interact with the exhibit and understand the role of antibiotics in our good health. Doctors are looking towards Ayurveda, trying to understand the Ayurvedic drugs, and a new study called as Ethnopharmacology is being evolved. They are trying to identify the active component in many of the commonly used materials in our kitchen as well as in our daily life, and they have also found that many of them have got antibiotic characters. People are looking towards nature to see whether they can identify new antibiotic drugs. One such example we have here is about the Komodo dragon. So Komodo dragon's bloodstream is known to contain a antibiotic element called as DRGN1, which is actually good enough to fight a particular species of bacteria. Basically, the DRGN1 is a protein which actually is extracted from the lizard's blood and saliva and is likely to give us immunity towards specific bacteria. The exhibition also has three-dimensional views of some of the bacteria which one can commonly come across. Since you cannot actually see them with your naked eye, we have created this setup to actually see many of these bacteria in their three-dimensional form. So visitors coming to this exhibition can have first-hand vision of the microorganisms and bacteria in their three-dimensional form. At the same time, we also have an interactive here in which one can understand how simple microorganisms develop into superbugs. It's basically a game where one can actually host the bacteria on a petri dish and try known antibiotics to kill those bacteria. So more the use of antibiotics, more the resistance developed by these microorganisms towards the known antibiotics. So this game can be played by the visitors to understand how simple bacteria become superbugs. So we move on to the next section in the exhibition, and in this exhibition we are trying to focus on new diagnostic tools which are being developed across the world to identify the infections. Because diagnosing and identifying the infection is the first remedy to get into a proper treatment. In order to have a successful, effective diagnosis technology, the United Kingdom has announced a prize known as Longitude Prize, wherein anybody on this earth can develop a diagnostic kit which can detect and diagnose an infection in the minimum possible time and also indicate what type of bacteria is responsible for this infection. Now we come to the last section of the exhibition, wherein the global phenomena of antibiotic resistance, how we are trying to corner. Now this is the campaign done worldwide by different organizations about the importance of antibiotics. India is also not left behind. In India, our government of India has developed mechanisms to identify the antimicrobial resistance of different organisms, and our Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji, through his Mann Ki Baat, has expressed the new guidelines and policies that the government has devised for effective use of antibiotics and also to curtail the resistance of microbes towards the known antibiotics. One can ask a question to the four experts who are in this exhibit and get the answer from these questions. So all your doubts about antibiotics, all your doubts about antibiotic resistance are answered in this exhibition through this exhibit, Ask the Expert. So likewise, we are trying to bring in the entire gamut of information for our visitors through this exhibition. After getting themselves cleared about all the doubts, the visitor can also play a quiz game wherein three visitors can have an automatic quiz game in which the question comes up on the screen and one can answer these questions to update themselves about the various aspects of antibiotic resistance and the microbes. So with this information, we would also like the visitor to take a pledge that they would use the antibiotics as per the prescription of the doctors and at the same time use it effectively so that we don't expose the antibiotics too much to the microbes, so that during the process of microbes evolution they develop resistance to the known drugs. So this is in brief about the exhibition Superbugs, the end of antibiotics. So as we scan through the exhibition, we can find that this exhibition highlights the role of microbes in human health, how these microbes have influenced our lifestyle, how biologists have been working to fight against these microbes by developing antibiotics. But then at the dead end of the road, we now have all these microbes becoming superbugs.